Welcome to the Business Over Beer Happy Hour, a daily dose of support for business owners, entrepreneurs, and people passionate about what they do. Hosted by Ben Surratt, Jonathan Kaler, and Jason Knope, it's time to grab a beer, enjoy some cheer, and join together.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bob Happy Hour. I am Ben Surratt. Across the city from me, a couple of blocks up, is our friend Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan. Happy Friday.
Hello, Ben. Happy Friday. This is not how we normally do Fridays, but, under the circumstances, I am just really glad that we can still be together and drink some beer and enjoy happy hour. And with us, also across town, up in north central Vancouver, Washington, is the gift that keeps on giving. Hashtag check the head, Jason Knope. Welcome to Happy Hour, my friend. How are you tonight?
North central Vancouver, you make me sound like a gangster. I am fantastic, guys.
Hey, Knope, if the shoe fits, my man.
That's me, man, the gangster. The gangster of Hazeldale.
Love it. Hey, do we have a guest with us for Happy Hour today?
Yeah, we got Mr. Michael Perozzo of Zzepelin.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, thank you so much for joining us tonight, man.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is fun.
So let's start just really quick. Normally we like to start with the guests. You're obviously you're really tied. Your business is tied to the local brewery industry. So just for all of our listeners, why don't you give just a 50,000-foot view of your business and what you're into, and then we'll get into the happy hour beverages.
Yeah, so Zzepelin is a marketing agency. We do graphic design, social media marketing, web design, videography, photography for the food and beverage industry. Breweries make up about 15 to 20% of our book of business. And beyond that is a lot of restaurants, cafes, bottle shops, tap rooms, dessert shops, and pizza restaurants. And so you can imagine we're having a wild, wild week.
Yeah, I'll bet you are. All right. Well, we're going to kick off happy hour drinking with today's highlighted beer. So I went up to Ghost Runner's Brewery and Kitchen and got a whole plethora of different beers. But the one that I'm going to highlight is called Fluffy Pink Unicorns.
Right
and this is a raspberry goza. It's 4.5% alcohol. And this is not my typical style, but we were talking. I was talking with Jeff, the owner, and he really wanted me to try this one. He said it's one of his favorites. He thinks it's one of the best beers that they brew. So we're going to highlight it. So let me open it up and let it rip.
Right on. Yeah, that's a great beer, and one that I remember they debuted that, 3-ish years ago now, at the Oregon Brewers Fest. Was the first place they brewed and poured that beer, and it was a huge hit.
Well, right out of the gate, I mean, it almost looks like pink lemonade or a rosé wine. That's the color that it's got, but it's got this beautiful head on it. It's got the smell of the sour raspberries, but it's also got a bit of dankness to it on the aroma. So, prost, gentlemen. Welcome to Happy Hour.
Prost.
Wow, it's exactly what you would expect. It's a lot of raspberry. It's got that tartness. It's got a nice little bite though. It's not overly sour though. I mean, when I drink sours, a lot of times it's almost like drinking Hawaiian punch or high C or something like that. But this is actually really nicely balanced. Again, I'm not a big sour drinker, but I actually really like this. The raspberry is there, but it's relatively well balanced and kind of tame, and got a nice bitterness to it as well. So that's a good beer. What about you, Mike? You got to have a good beer that you're drinking.
I do. I'm drinking Brothers Cascadia Brewing's Hellas Lager. It's 4.5 ABV and just got a nice biscuity sort of a malt backbone, really subtle on the hops, and just a total crusher. I mean, this is a working man's beer, 4.5%. You sit down and you crush 3 of these. And speaking of which, like, I'm already like half done with my 16 ounces of this beer, and we just got started. So.
That's a good beer. I like that one.
Yeah. What about you, Canope? What'd you pop open?
I popped open a fresh squeezed IPA from Deschutes.
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
geez, Bentley here.
Impossibly juicy, undeniably refreshing.
And Nope is on the IPA kick. I am blown away.
It's a good beer. We had it on the show once. I liked it.
What about you, Benjamin?
Well, I went to Taps and got myself some crowlers, and you know what? They had Mythic Worlds from Modern Times, and I'm like, dude, yeah, I gotta have that. So
Hey, you're on a modern.
I'm having
this week.
I am, dude. I don't know why.
Well, hey,
But it is delicious.
That's awesome. We've got some listeners now. Team Money in the house. If you haven't listened to her podcast, it was fantastic. She was showing off her special talents in that episode. So go check that out. Team Money, welcome. Appreciate you joining us. Liz, BC1. Hey, chat in there. Let us know what you guys are drinking. And pros to all of you. Thanks for joining us. So, Mike, let's talk about this week. It's been a crazy week for all of us. You and I had a chance to talk about 2 weeks ago, and you mentioned to me that the Vancouver Brew Fest was canceled, and we were talking briefly about the sort of the trickle down impact to that being canceled. So maybe let's start there. Why don't you talk a little bit about the impact to the breweries and the charities when a brew fest like that gets canceled?
So, I mean, luckily we weren't too far down the line in the planning and organizing of the brew fest in terms of how it affects others. So we hadn't booked food trucks yet. We hadn't booked all the breweries yet. We'd had a few that, are perennial commitments that we know they're showing up. We had a collab in the works between the Couve Brew Bevy from Final Draft Tap House and 5440 in Washougal. They were going to make the official beer of the fest. Was going to be a hazy pale. We were really looking forward to that. So there's some impact there in terms of, we had to cancel and we'll let people down. However, there wasn't a real financial impact in terms of, we hadn't purchased any beer, we hadn't committed to purchasing any beer yet, that sort of thing. It was just mostly kind of behind the scenes marketing planning and logistic planning. The beer we were going to brew, that was probably going to be brewed this week or next, were the dates that we were looking at having everybody to 5440 to do that. And obviously that didn't happen. So as far as impact to the breweries or food vendors, I'm thankful that there wasn't a large impact there. Where I think the impact really was, and this is when me and Jonathan talked, we quickly brainstormed something and even rented up the flagpole a little bit to Ben's Bottle Shop, and they were totally down to do something like this. We thought, well, what about these charities that are losing out? And that's really where the impact is the Spring Brew Fest usually raises somewhere around $6,000 for 3 different charities, so about $2,000 a piece.
Jeez.
Yeah, so we thought, well, shoot, they're losing out. Is there a way we could do something to help them? And quickly brainstormed something that the folks at Ben's Bottle Shop were totally down for. Like, yeah, let's host a mini fest. And at the time, there was kind of this talk of, hey, we're going to have to limit crowds to 250 people. So we thought, well, let's do this in 2 different sessions, and we can have 250 tickets sold the first session, 250 tickets sold the second session. And, if tickets are 15, 20 bucks a piece or something like that to this little miniature Southwest Washington Beer Fest, we can at least use all that ticket sales and give it to the charities, and this be a community win. Well, obviously, here we are today. Y'all know what happened. All gatherings have just been shut down. And Ben's Bottle Shop, love those guys. They're plug for them. They're open 2 to 7. They got all the food and all the beer and all the sake and all the cider and all the wine that you could ever want in your entire life to go. And they're open as of now, under the restrictions we currently got.
So talk about those charities. Are they different charities every spring, or are there specific charities that the Brewfest supports?
Yeah, one of them is regularly the Mount St. Helens Institute. They do a lot of things for conservation around the mountain, promoting education around what's happening around the mountain. A really great group. Another one, shoot, and they've changed a little bit over the years. So Cody, who runs Vancouver Brewfest, is a veteran, and a lot of these are veteran-based organizations. The other 2, I believe, are veteran-based organizations, and I'm pulling them up right now because I feel bad that I don't know right off the top of my head.
Well, we'll be publishing this recording, and we can take that offline, and we'll make sure we get the names of those charities in the show notes and on the blog post.
Totally.
Yeah.
Second Chance Companions is one of those. Second Chance Companions, they help provide companionship animals to folks suffering from PTSD. So that's one of them. And then Northwest Cave is another one. That's the Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation, National Women's Coalition Against. So I'm sorry, it's not Northwest Cave. NW Cave stands for National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation. So that's another one of the groups that benefits from the Brewfest that is sadly not going to see funds from the Spring Brewfest this year.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Mike, where do you see the craft brew industry as it is today? And not this. I mean, let's get out of the bad stuff. But since the explosion, the craft brew explosion, what has changed and what has stayed the same, and what makes Vancouver just unique in the craft brew industry?
Yeah, Vancouver, I think is really neat because of how cutting edge we are. I think a lot of our breweries really are pushing the envelope to do some neat things, as evidenced by when we go up to the Washington Beer Awards. Southwest Washington cleans up. The only
Mm.
region The only region that does better than Southwest Washington in total number of medals is King County. Um, and that said, King County, they only beat us by 10 medals, but they have about 120 more breweries.
Oh
Whoa!
my goodness.
Just to kind of put
Wow.
that in perspective, if you were going to break it down to medal count per brewery, Southwest Washington is absolutely killing it over the entire state. And a lot of those medals go to folks like Grains of Wrath, Brothers Cascadia, North Jetty, Dick's Brewing Company, Trapdoor. Trapdoor cleaned up. They got this last year. They got the gold and the silver in hazy
Dang.
IPA. It just ridiculous. so
Dang.
so they're killing it. And that I think is really good for our region when we're talking about Southwest Washington. Now, if we're going to back up from Southwest Washington and kind of look at the whole and take coronavirus out of the picture, the story of 2019 was a lot of consolidation of the old guard. We saw mainstays like Bridgeport and Lompoc and Alameda
Mm.
close their doors out of Portland, and that was interesting. And a lot of people analyzed that. A lot of people looked at that and said, "What caused that?" And in each case, you can kind of break it down, and there's different causes. But if there's an overarching thing, it's your ability to adapt to change in the beer world is extremely important. You need to look fresh and taste fresh consistently. That means new offerings. That means your apparel, your logos, your can designs have to be consistently on the front foot, and not resting on your laurels, which, when you look at those brands I mentioned, you're gonna find some things that's kind of like, well, they kind of rested on their laurels. They kind of
Yeah.
looked the same for a lot of years. They tasted the same for a lot of years, and what was hot and crushing it in 2012 just didn't make it to 2019.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you're talking about is, you know, it's across the board with business across the board. You have to know who you are. You have to have an identity, and I think every brewery in the Southwest Washington, especially in Vancouver, they all have their own identity, and even the tap houses have their own identity. And I think for me, that's like refreshing because I know I can go to different places and have not only different beer, but have a different experience. And I think that's another thing that's unique about the craft brew industry in this particular area.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think each brewery's definitely done just a great job of kind of carving out their niche, and they each have their own vibe and their own feel to them. There's a very friendly competitiveness of it's like a challenge of creativity, um, that they're always coming up with creative events, creative ways to support the community, and it never feels hostile. It's never like, you know, it's never like Brothers Cascadia is trying to to outdo their community support and how much good they can do for local families versus Trapdoor and what they're doing for the Help Foundation and different things. Like it's not like
Yeah.
we're mad at each other about these things or anything. It's like
Yeah.
hey, no, this is all great. We're all raising the bar and
Yeah.
how
Yep.
supportive we can be.
I think I think Jonathan and I, and even Knope, I think you were there too. We talked about that. Like, didn't we talk about before one of our episodes about how the breweries around here, they are in competition, but they don't act like they're competing. It's very strange.
We talked about that when we were doing the podcast at Portside.
That's it.
Yeah. So, you mentioned speaking about, creative industries. Speaking of that, I think there's a lot of folks who are trying to look for additional creative ways to help some of these industries, kind of the outside of the box type things. Is there something that we should be considering other than gift cards and to-go items to help support these businesses so they can support the charities and stuff they work with? You mentioned apparel. I mean, is there any other things that we could do?
Yeah, there's apparel. It's interesting because so many of the breweries have been, for lack of a better word, they've been reduced to all having the same business model. So much of drinking beer is about the people you're with. It's about the person serving it to you. It's about the patio you're drinking it on. It's about the pub you're drinking it in and the familiar faces. And all of that's been stripped away with what we're seeing right now with coronavirus and these restrictions. So that makes it tough because literally all anyone can do is buy and drink local craft beer. So what we've seen in these first 4 or 5 days since this announcement's come down in Washington and Oregon to move to this to-go model, we've seen really a great outpouring of support in most cases. And most breweries I've talked to, they're saying people have been great. People are showing up. Like they're getting beer to go, they're getting food to go. They're coming through. Like the place looks empty, but every 5 minutes there's a transaction happening, and that transaction that
That's
used to
fantastic.
be it used to be somebody who'd hang out at.
Well, I think we temporarily lost his
So-
audio, but
So the average.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
oh, there he is. Hey, Mike, your audio dropped out there for just a minute. So you
Oh, I
were
did.
saying,
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No, I was
you were saying
so,
you left off at people are showing up every 5 minutes and making a purchase where normally
Yes.
they would be sitting at the bar.
They'd
That's
normally
where
be sitting at the bar and maybe racking up a bill of $15, $20. Now they're picking up 3 or 4 4-packs to go and a hat, and that transaction is $30, $40, $50.
Cool.
So
Whoa.
there's still transactions happening, and people are coming in, and it's supportive and it's great, and we need to continue to do that. My fear is, our reaction to this has been, let's go support, let's go pick up a 4-pack, let's do this, everybody, and everybody's been into it, which has been super cool. My fear is, are we going to keep that up? And that's not only my fear, but like that's my encouragement to anybody listening to this. Like, keep it up. Don't stop doing that. There's fears and whispers out there now that we could end up in the same boat that California is in, which is we could be, on a stay-at-home order, where we're asked not to leave our homes unless we have an emergency. And if that becomes the case, can you continue to support your local businesses? Can you continue to support your local breweries by way of gift card and apparel purchases through their website? That may be our only options coming up here soon. So, and if that's not the case, if we wake up Monday morning and the world is still like it is right now, did you drink that 4-pack? If you did, go get some more. Let's go.
Well, what comes to mind is, when you have a friend or a relative who has somebody close to them who dies, and they get this outpouring of support in those first days and first weeks, but then that support starts to wane, and that's when people really need that help. And so I think your point is really, really good there, and I just want to stress that this first week, everybody's enthusiasm and excitement around trying to help people because it's fresh, but it's got to be, in weeks from now, as long as we're able to, we've got to be able to keep it up. And if we do go on this, sheltered in place, what I was talking about when I was up at Ghost Runners today, their concern is, what do they do with the beers that are in tanks? I mean, this has a far-reaching impact to their business, because they've got to be near their beer to continue to produce it, or else it all just goes to waste. So, she was saying, do I have to, maybe I have to shelter here? Like they may have to live in the brewery just so that they don't waste all of the beer that are currently in tanks. And so
I never even thought of that. That is I never thought of that.
That hadn't occurred to me. And, there's other businesses, I'm sure, that have that same type of issue with some sort of expiring inventory or some other product that needs, consistent monitoring. So being sheltered in place is not just a matter of, we can't go out and do it. Can these businesses even survive because they can't go out and save their products or their inventory or whatever it might be. So we have just a few minutes left here, Mike. Talking about things that people are trying to do. One thing that you've done this week is doing and I'm probably going to get it wrong. I wish I had it in front of me. The virtual pub. Talk a little bit about the virtual pub that you've been doing, and promote that a little bit for the listeners.
Yeah, so it's the Beer Nerds virtual pub. Beer Nerds is a private Facebook group that anyone can join. So when I say private, that means that you have to search it. You go onto Facebook, you search Beer Nerds, you'll see our group. It's about 3,600, 3,700 members, something like that. You'll see that. You click join, and then you get approved to join by one of the admins. So myself and my friend Phil Mitchell started that group now coming up on 8 years ago, I think. 7 years ago, maybe. And the idea was we both had family members and even coworkers and employers that we were like, maybe they don't want to see us posting about beer every day like we want to post and talk about beer every day on social media. And so we were like, okay, how do we form a group where we can share as much as we want about beer without, Aunt Myrtle calling us and saying, "I'm afraid you're an alcoholic," we just wanted to.
I'm afraid I am too, Aunt Myrtle.
Yeah. We just wanted a safe place to talk about beer, and so that's why we created Beer Nerds. And what we're doing there, just when all this happened Monday, a friend of mine mentioned to me, just kind of jokingly, he was like, "Man, we're only going to be able to get together and have a beer online. Like, we're not going to be able to meet in pubs and stuff. This is going to suck." And I went, "Oh, actually, we could meet for beer online. Let's do a live stream every day." And so my job in working with Zzepelin and helping these breweries stay afloat and be creative in this difficult time means that I'm kind of out at these places and talking to these people. So I decided, let's do a virtual pub where I'll go live from wherever I'm at once a day for about a half hour, and we'll just enjoy a beer together and encourage people to keep drinking craft beer and talk to some of these beer makers and find out what struggles they're facing. So join the Beer Nerds group, jump into the virtual pub. Happens at a different time every day, so I can't tell you what time, but when you're in the group, you get a little notification that says, Michael's live in Beer Nerds right now, tune in. And that's a good way to just stay in touch with what's going on in the beer scene right now, and also have a beer with some people when you're cooped up at home.
Sweet.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I couldn't think of a better way to spend our Friday happy hour. We love what you're doing, and obviously it fits in with what we're trying to do. We talked about the Facebook group on Beer Nerds. We'll include a link to that. If people want to find out more about Michael Perozzo and Zzepelin Marketing, where can people find it?
You can follow me as Michael Perozzo, my name, on Twitter or Instagram. You can find me that way. Zzepelin is at Air Zzepelin with two Z's. Two Z's coming from my last name. So, yeah, that's how to get in touch with me and Zzepelin.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for the time, man. We really appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate you guys. This is great. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing. We'll all get to the other side of this, and there's going to be a lot of beer and a lot of partying on the other side of this.
You bet. You know it, brother. Appreciate you, Mike.
Appreciate you guys.
And we appreciate everybody listening, and we thank you all, and cheers to everyone, and just stay happy and stay thirsty.
Business Over Beer reminds you to always drink responsibly. Our theme song is Alley Cat by Soul Shifters. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the next Business Over Beer Happy Hour.